All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to our seventh Ask Me Anything digital town hall. Joining us tonight is Nevada State Assemblywoman Annie Black. Annie is from the 19th Assembly District, which is based out of the rural town in Mesquite in northeastern Clark County. Before coming an Assemblywoman, Annie served as a city councilwoman for the Mesquite City Council. In 2020, Annie ran for the Nevada State Assembly, challenging a Reno incumbent in the primary. She went on to defeat him and won the general election unopposed. Once in the state assembly, Annie has stood out herself out as one of the fiercest fighters for the America First agenda. In May of 2021, she protested mask mandates in the state of Nevada by refusing to wear a mask on the assembly floor, causing the Democrat-controlled House to strip her of her right to vote on bills, saying they wouldn't give it back unless she wore a mask and apologized. But Annie stood her ground and eventually got her right to vote back. She is a strong backer of President Trump and the MAGA movement and is a proud mother. She boldly stated her goal is to go to Carson City to, quote, raise hell, not taxes. Annie, welcome to the Save America server. Would you mind introducing yourself and go over how you got to where you are now?
Sure. Thank you guys for having me. I was born and raised in Las Vegas, and actually born on Ronald Reagan's inauguration day, strangely enough, in 1981. And that kind of got me thinking about politics as I got older, and I realized that I was born on that date. So I worked on a lot of campaigns over the course of my high school years, and then stayed really active in politics until 2010 when I originally ran for the state assembly. I tried to take out an incumbent in 2010, but I lost really badly, actually, and just kept at it for the next decade. Got on the city council, as you said, and then made it to the state assembly. So that's my journey.
Well, awesome. Once again, thank you for coming. Let's get right into the thick of it. We can select one of our first guest of the AMA.
Yep, I'm gonna
So
go ahead
I'm
and yeah, I'll bring, Nick Tobot up.
Hello. Hey, good evening, radio check.
Yep, we can hear you.
Righto. Hey, good evening, ma'am. Really have one simple question for you. That is, what is your opinion on the National Firearms Act, and what will be your plan to deal with it?
Can you refresh my memory on the National Firearms Act? I'm sorry, I'm
Oh,
really
easy, ma'am.
up to
Don't
speed
don't
on
worry.
state policy,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, NFA
The
is
national.
more federal policy, not state policy.
Okay. Well, the National Firearms Act is a unconstitutional law that restricts basically machine guns, short barrel rifles, and suppressors
so I can tell
from
you,
all
I can
Biden citizens.
Sure. I can tell you from the most basic standpoint, I am pro Second Amendment, period. I don't think that guns of any sort, whether they're ghost guns, automatic, semi-automatic, any sort of handgun, any guns, period, are totally fine by me in the hands of law-abiding citizens. It's criminals that we have to worry about. And if laws work to stop criminals and crime, then we wouldn't have any criminals or crime. So they just work to affect legally law-abiding gun owners, in my opinion.
Yeah, very nice. Um, Ms. Black, I have a few questions, to bring up first. First, thanks for joining us again tonight, and I just want to remind everybody, Ms. Black is an Assemblywoman from Nevada, and she's not at a national level. So if you could try and keep your questions somewhat state related, um, which brings me to my first question. Do you believe that the Democrats have successfully infiltrated all of the different levels of government, especially the most important ones, let's say the school board, the state assemblies, the state senates, township boards, those types of things, and implemented their policies for a long-term change? And do you think that we can do the same and win it back?
absolutely do. I can speak specifically to Nevada, and I can tell you that Democrats are in the majority in both houses of the legislature. We have a Democrat governor. Actually, the highest elected Republican we have in our state is the Secretary of State, Barbara Sagaski. Other than that, Democrats control pretty much everything. The largest county in Nevada, which is Clark County, is all Democrats. There's not one single Republican on there. So yeah, I mean, I think for sure Clark County School District, which is one of the largest school districts in the country, I believe we have one Republican, and that's actually a woman from where I live, from Mesquite. Um, that's the district she serves. So yeah, they've definitely infiltrated every level of politics in our state. And I absolutely do think that we can turn it around. It just requires us, I think, changing our tactics. And, I think we need to take a lesson from Trump's playbook and start going and doing what politicians have traditionally been told not to do, which is to just tell people what they need to hear, not tell them what they want to hear, and go in there and run like you are going to. It doesn't matter if you get reelected. You just have to make decisions based on what's happening with what's being legislated in front of you at that time and not think about your future prospects. Because if you do that, I have seen that people in the legislature were operating out of a sense of self-preservation instead of doing what's right in the moment. So I definitely think we have a chance to do it, but we've got a lot of work to do.
Nice. And that leads into my second question. A lot of the people in our server have aspirations of helping make changes, whether it's just volunteering for a campaign or helping with elections, being an election judge or a poll watcher or something like that. Could you kind of describe for us your journey and how you got to become a council? First, you were on the council at your city, and then you became a rep. What was that like? Could you like kind of give a little bit of detail on how you got interested and involved in the politics at the lower levels and then worked your way up?
Yeah, so it's kind of a interesting story. Like I said, I was born on Ronald Reagan's inauguration day, and my grandmother gave me a coin that was a commemorative coin of that date. And I think I was probably 10 or 11 years old, and for some reason that just sparked a curiosity and an interest in me, and I became really involved and interested in politics from a young age, and then started working on campaigns here. So it would be door knocking, making phone calls, um, you know, doing the normal things that volunteers do on a campaign. And I think you have to be in this world, you kind of have to be known by the insiders in politics if you want to have a chance. And so I think you have to kind of be in the scene, you have to go to the events, you have to be involved. Because if you just show up, it's going to be a lot harder for people to trust you and know that you're a real, actual, legitimate part of the movement versus just some outsider that they've never seen before. So I would definitely say, find a candidate that you really like, that you identify with a lot of the things that they identify with. Go help them out, see what it's all about, um, and then get active in your local politics. If it's your county party or a Republican club or whatever, whatever group you like, and then just over time, I think if you feel like it's something you want to do, then start building up that network of people that eventually are going to be able to help you get to where you want to go. Because one of the things that I've noticed over time is that a big part of this job is fundraising. And a lot of people have a hard time wrapping their head around that. You feel like it's a very idealistic endeavor to get into politics, and a lot of people are very uncomfortable fundraising. But if you can't fundraise, you can't be successful. So I would definitely say get comfortable with that concept and find some people that are proficient in politics. It's hard to find competent um, consultants right now. So that's another challenge that we're facing in Nevada. A lot of the same old tactics are being used, and I think that's why Trump is such a huge influence to me. He did things, in my opinion, he did things differently than the status quo, than what we've been doing for years. So I think one advantage that your people have is that you're obviously very proficient with technology, which is super important these days. Social media is huge. So you guys, seems to me like you already have a leg up. But that's where I would start if I wanted to get into it.
Thank you very much. Let's move on to the hot topic of the past couple of years, and that's the effort by Democrats and leftists to push mandates of face masks and vaccines. And you made national headlines when you boldly refused to wear a mask on the state assembly floor, and that drew quite a response from the Democrats. What? Why do you believe they are doing this? What's their end game, and how can we fight it?
In my opinion, it seems mostly like a control tactic, and also in Nevada, uh, COVID really was able to get Democrats to be able to pass permanent legislation that did legalized ballot harvesting and all mail-in ballots. And so that was a huge goal of theirs. I think Democrats nationwide have been pushing for those things, and they use this as an opportunity to bring it home and make it happen. And like I said, I think it's a control thing. And it's at this point, to me, it feels like they're driving a huge wedge between the vaccinated people and the unvaccinated people. And it's seems to me that most of the vaccinated people, I'm speaking in generalities obviously, but most of the vaccinated people seem to be on the conservative side, and they're basically vilifying us and making us responsible for the Delta variant and all these other COVID catastrophes that they create every single day. So I think they just want to vilify us, they want to control us, and ultimately it's just in time to try to make everybody stay home for the next election, which is perfect for them.
Yeah, that's a very good point that you bring up. Actually, I believe that the latest data from the CDC stated that most of the unvaccinated are of African American descent. So it seems like they're kind of a bit racist, which is kind of their MO, being Democrats. But
Yeah.
but anyways, so and you brought up a good segue into the next thing, which is voter fraud. And I know that is near and dear to many, many of us, and especially in Nevada, because Nevada is so close to California. You have a lot of Californians that maybe purchased homes in Nevada for or condos or whatnot, just to put up on Airbnb or to do whatever with, to rent out or whatnot, or to stay in when they come to visit town. Do you think that there was quite a bit of absentee voting of out-of-staters who had Nevada residents, physical residents there, but were not eligible to vote? Did you see that that might be a potential problem? And as a state assembly person, I would think that you guys have kind of the power to um, kind of watch the voting regulations within the state. So what would you do about curtailing some of that potentially? Maybe the voter rolls or anything that you can think of.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't personally see anybody or come across anybody who I could verify personally, but I did hear stories of people saying that, like we've all heard, 4 or 5 ballots came to my house. 3 of them were for my family. 2 of them, or one of them, might have been from someone that lived there before, or someone that passed away, or someone that you've never heard of, or maybe your child is in college or they moved away, but they're still getting a ballot to your home and they're getting one in the state where they now live. So I definitely heard all those stories. I haven't obviously verified them for myself, and that's the problem with voter fraud, is it is increasingly difficult to prove. I've also heard a ton of stories about and seen the videos where they can show that on the voting machines, they can stick a bunch of ballots in there and days later and then backdate them. And so to me, if there's a shadow of a doubt, we have to look into it and we have to do a serious investigation and put people's minds at ease, because a large amount of people have told me, I'm never going to vote again. I don't know if that's actually going to be true, but I think that would be exactly what the opposition wants us to do. They want us to get disheartened and disappointed and feel defeated and then just give up. And so we definitely cannot do that. In Nevada, and I think for now, until Congress passes some law that changes it, the states have a right to dictate how they run their elections. And unfortunately, we did have some good election reform bills proposed in the last session in Nevada. And unfortunately, because we are barely out of the super minority in the Assembly and in the minority in the Senate, the Democrats didn't want to hear any of those bills, obviously. So they actually went the other direction. And like I said earlier, made mail-in balloting for everyone and ballot harvesting permanently legal. So it's going to be hard in a state like ours, to fix any potential, abnormalities, I guess, in elections. But hopefully states like Arizona, where they've got an audit, and other states where they're starting to chip away at that voter integrity, and the last election, all the improprieties that happened. Hopefully we can get some momentum going with that and then translate it into other states like ours. But as it stands right now, we're just so underwater with the Democrats. We don't have a leg to stand on.
Yeah, I completely understand. All right, we have K-Mox. He's going to come up and ask a question. So, all right,
Now,
K-Mox, you're up.
with
up.
your state, what do you think, what state laws do you think should be passed? Like state ID, voter ID, like stuff like that.
Absolutely. I mean, you have to have an ID to get vaccinated, right? You have to have an ID to drive a car. You have to have an ID to do everything. So you should be able to show ID to vote. And I think we need to, as someone said earlier, clean up our voter rolls. There was legislation passed that, I think it was something to effect that the coroner was going to interface directly with the elections department, and if someone passed away, they would send that information directly to the elections department. So that person had been deceased would immediately be removed from the voter rolls. We also have, jokingly, but it's not funny, refer to election day in Nevada as election week. They're still taking ballots after the election is over. I would love to see that go away. And I would love to see us go back to paper ballots. I just think that until we can figure out what's going on with the electronic voting machines, which maybe never, they just seem to me to be too susceptible. People are too leery of them. Let's just go back to paper ballots. And, if you're in the military or you want to vote absentee, you can ask for one of those ballots like we've always done it. And let's not blanket mail ballots out to every voting age person in the state. We passed what we call motor voter in Nevada. I think it was 3 or 4 years ago. And that basically is, you go get a driver's license and you get automatically registered to vote. Well, I don't think that there's any distinguishable way to tell a difference between an ID of an immigrant versus a citizen. So that could be problematic too, because you might be able to slip through the cracks and be able to somehow register to vote. So those are a couple of things that I think we could start with.
Yep, those seem very, I would say, straightforward and make a lot of sense, but for some reason they seem to be controversial. I'm not sure why. Is Nevada a state that allows illegals to get driver's license?
Yeah, it was under the
Yeah,
guise of, you know, if we allow them to get driver's licenses, then we don't have to worry about them driving around without
insurance.
insurance. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, they did that here in Illinois as well. All right. Um, we got Trump Team Atlas up to ask a question as well. Let's bring him up on the stage. All right.
Hello.
I
Hello.
Hi. I was reading your Wikipedia page. Um, Not that that's very necessarily accurate. Um, but it put a lot of emphasis on January 6th.
Mhm.
There's a lot of sources. Um, and it just says, well, fact checks you with Reuters says that there was no Antifa people there, but I don't even know how Reuters would know any, you know, they probably didn't even have anybody there. They're just claiming that's the case. But um, are you quite certain of what they say you're not, what you're wrong about?
So I haven't looked at that. Somebody sent me like a screenshot of a part of it. On January 6th, that was going to go down. And when it did, I turned around and went the other way. And when I gave interviews after, I was honest. There was a gathering when the president spoke originally that was like your typical MAGA rally. I mean, I've been to a ton of them actually. So it's the typical everyone's in a great mood. Everybody's wearing red. Nobody's wearing masks. I mean, for the majority of the people are not wearing masks. It's just even though the election hadn't gone our way, it was just a typical Trump rally. It was a great environment and atmosphere. And as we walked to the Capitol, there was a different dynamic. And that was all I said was that there are people in black military type uniforms, all black with cargo pants and, full helmets and masks on. And, um, and it just felt like a different vibe. And that was what I said. And obviously, the liberal media took that and ran with it. And, that was my observations. If it was inaccurate, that's what I saw, that's what I said. And so I don't know if those people were Antifa or agitators, but they certainly didn't look to me like the same people that were at the rally earlier in the day. So.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of unanswered questions concerning about that event. Um, so let's move on to the Nevada state economy. And we felt it before in 2008, and we really felt it during this lockdown. When a state relies solely on tourism and mining for its economy, it's you're putting all your eggs in a burning basket, in my opinion. What do you feel can be done to expand and diversify the Nevada state economy as to not just depend on one or two very volatile sources of income for the state?
I don't think that we need to do anything. I think the only thing, to attract people, I think what we could do, what the legislature could do is cut our taxes, make this a much more business-friendly environment. That's how Nevada was. That's how we started. My family came here in the 70s from Arizona and California with basically nothing and became very successful people. And there are a ton of families here that have that same story. That's a very common story in Nevada, but it's becoming like they've regulated it so much that now it's just so litigious to do anything and costly and it's still better than other states, don't get me wrong, but it's just the harder you make it to do business, the less likely you're going to get businesses here. So I don't know that we need to do any sort of really anything other than cut taxes, cut regulations, and get out of the way and let people realize that this is a great place to do business. Because you're right, when your economy relies solely on tourism and building homes and mining, you're going to be devastated every time there's a crash or a downturn in the economy.
Absolutely. You do have a good point. Um, let's another issue I'd like to talk about concerning the state, and it's a issue that's a lot of Nevadans hold very close to their heart right now, especially parents, is the state of our education system. Um, I personally believe it's in shambles. We're consistently ranked as one of the worst states for education in the union. Um, Clark, the school districts and the Department of Education seem more focused on pushing a political agenda rather than prepping our youth to integrate into the workforce. And instead of raising our standards up, we seem to keep going down. Um, what can be done to help strengthen our education system in the state? Because I feel our youth is our future and we desperately need to help them. So what can be done about the state of our education system here in Nevada?
In my opinion, our unions are just way too strong. They're the ones that have kept us shut down through the COVID pandemic, and they're still, we're going back to school on Monday and kids are still required to wear masks. Um, I just think that when the unions have more power than the parents, then it's up to a parent to either find a charter school, which they're very competitive, right? Like you're going to be on a waiting list if you try to get into a charter school, or a private school, which a lot of us can't afford to send our kids to private school. So I think, like it was alluded to earlier, we need to get a lot more parents on the school boards. We need to rein our teachers' unions in, and we need to be in control of our kids' education. And if we can't get with this, get in the school board and get our unions under control, then the state legislature we need to elect enough Republicans where we can get ESAs or some way where we can get vouchers for parents so that the money will follow the student instead of you know just being stuck at a public school. It's like everything, right? It's safe to say this group believes in the free market approach. If you have some competition and kids start getting pulled out of CCSD because we have vouchers or ESAs, they're going to have to start being competitive. And right now there's just no competition, and they know they've got us kind of backed into a corner. We don't have a lot of other options for our students. So I would say the money needs to follow the student. We need some competition and more choices for parents, because not all students are the same. And parents should be deciding what sort of education they get, not Clark County School District and teachers' unions.
Absolutely. I think there needs to be a lot more freedom of choice with respect to the parent and the child alike to our education. Let's bring up Nux. He's another one of our admins at the server. He has a follow-up question for you.
Hi, Ms. Black. Thank you so much again for taking the time to join us. As you're talking about children and education, I remember from having looked at your website that you're if I recall correctly, a mother of 2 teenage sons. And I just wanted to kind of pivot off that education question where, yes, we definitely see that teachers unions have too much power. School boards are pushing agendas, but even outside of the educational environment, we're seeing the left just almost a full-on assault of indoctrination towards children, whether that's just socialist ideals, sexualization, um, drag queen story hours. There was even some stuff on Twitter this past week where people were talking about should there be porn geared at children to ease them into porn. Like, I mean, there's a full-on cultural assault on children and family values. Where do we go from here? Like, how do we push back against that when we have Hollywood, media, news that's all just driving this, and national level politicians that are supporting it.
I think that, and yes, I do. I have two boys. They're 16 and 19, but I think parents need to take more control in what's going on with our kids. I remember I pulled my kids out of school to homeschool them for a while, and I just kept thinking in my head, am I doing this right? Are they learning enough? And am I going to be an adequate teacher for them? And I think parents need to start trusting themselves because clearly the institution doesn't know what they're doing. And I think we have to get back to our instincts and just protect our children and know that we instinctively know what's best for them. And we will do anything for our kids. And we need to protect them. If that means not taking them to the movies and keeping them off social media and being the bad guy parent, that's what you have to do. And maybe it's finding some other people in your community that have the same kind of beliefs that you do. And um it's not always going to be popular. With your children, I took my younger son out of high school last year because I didn't want him to wear a mask, and put him into a little Christian academy. And he was struggling because he missed all of his friends, but we got to draw the line, and we got to stand up for our kids. We've just got to protect them and stop thinking that teachers and the government know how to do it better than we do.
Yeah, thank you so much for that follow up and or for that answer, and also just the fact that you took that step. I mean, you're practicing what you're preaching, which is excellent to see from any public servant, any politician. It's unfortunately too rare. And I know you said you took your son out and put him in a smaller Christian environment. One of the issues that you have listed on your site is homeschooling promotion and support, not only because it's uh, good for taxpayers, but also that it provides the parents regain that control that you were just talking about, even with your own family. What are some steps that either you see happening in Nevada or that you think people could take as far as to promote homeschooling within their own communities and environment, other than simply doing it for their own family?
Um, it's tough, I'll be honest. Even in a small town like mine, I tried to start a homeschool co-op, and I had a charter school that was ready to come build in Mesquite. And this was last year, and I was surprised at that point that parents weren't ready to take the bull by the horns as far as their children's education goes, because to me, I viewed what was going on in our school system as a golden opportunity to get kids out of public education and into some other sort of education. What I was shocked by was how many parents were just sitting there waiting for CCSD to tell, or for Clark County School District to tell them what to do. Well, when can my kid go back to school? Can my kid wear a mask? Are you going to teach my kid about sex ed in second grade? Why are we asking those questions? We need to say, no, I'm not going to let you do that to my child. I'm going to make the choice for my child. But for some reason, I don't know if it's this kind of mentality that we think that, teachers and educators can do it better than we can. I'm not saying they can't, but I don't know what exactly is going on in the psyche of parents that holds them back from that. But I would say, if you're homeschooling, share that with other parents. I know I did. I told them, it's a challenge. But I bought my kids. Ron Paul has like a curriculum that you can buy. I bought that and used that, and it was definitely not easy, but um, it was it was worth it. And I think that we just need to share that with people. And I think the co-op is a genius invention because it's hard time wise, and you also want your kids to have that social activity time. So if we can establish, I think, more a kind of a support system for parents, it makes it a lot more feasible for working parents and for people that want that social aspect. So, I think if it's something that we believe in, we just have to promote it and create that network that helps other people take the leap as well.
Very nice. Very well said. And I would say that I probably agree 100%, maybe 1,000% with everything you said there about homeschooling and Christian schools compared to public schools. So I wanted to pivot back to unions. You just talked about it a couple questions prior, and you brought it up. Nevada is a huge union state, from my understanding, and it used to be, I would say, up until maybe a decade ago or so, maybe even 15 years ago at the most, that Democrats and unions didn't like illegal immigration because it infringed on the America First or Americans' jobs in those unions. They saw it as a threat to the American worker. Why do you think that they've kind of done a 180 with that and welcomed the illegal immigrants when it's counterproductive to American unions, number one? And do you think, in my follow-up question to that is, do you think that Republicans in Nevada kind of understand the power of the unions and kind of in the act of self-preservation maybe kowtow to them a little bit too much?
Yeah, my opinion would be that Democrats tend to prey on specific groups of people and they like to make them into victims. And, it seems like union employees, that was, like you said, right? We want to protect the American worker. That was their niche for a minute. And then it became whatever minority was the flavor of the day to kind of use that group of people and manipulate that group of people. And now it seems that, it's almost, um, I feel like they're just continuing to prey on people that are in a worse situation in another country. And it's not that we don't want to help them, but if you know anything about what's going on at the border, it's a huge humanitarian crisis. I mean, women and children um, are being sex trafficked and used to run drugs. It's not a good way for these people to get here. And it's not a good way for them to get here for our country, but it's not a good way for them to get here for their own health and well-being either. So to me, it just seems like that's the group that they want to manipulate and try to use right now. And if you can flood a bunch of people into this country, you can change the demographics of the electorate, right? I mean, I can tell you from standing outside of polls on election day, trying to talk to voters as they were going in, if they had last minute questions, that the Democrats had a table set up right outside the poll that I was standing at, and they were handing people that didn't speak English uh, like a mock ballot, and those people would take that and they would go right into the polling place and they would vote that way and come right back out, and there you go. And it's like, if the Democrat Party can butter them up and be their friend, then they'll trust them to tell them who to vote for. And I think that they a vast majority of people will do that. And it's an unfortunate situation, because what happens when Democrats move on to a different group and they want to use somebody else? They just don't care about these people anymore. And I don't think they ever cared about them to begin with, honestly, but um it's just unfortunate.
All right, thanks. Damien, you have a question. Go ahead and ask.
Hi, Mrs. Black. Nice to meet you here. I actually have two questions for you. So one specific to Nevada. So the condition of infrastructure is key to evaluating the quality of life for any state citizens. Early in 2021, U.S. News ranked all 50 states on multiple metrics, where Nevada ranked first in infrastructure out of all the states, landing first in internet access, seventh in transportation, and I think ninth in energy. It's a really good job over there. I was curious, in your opinion, what's gone right in Nevada so far that's led to the state ranking so highly in that specific category?
Um, I think that there's been I think the big part of it is that most people live in metropolitan areas, and there's been a lot of new growth. So I assume, I'm not a technological guru, as you guys realize today, but I assume that with internet and things like that, it's probably because a bulk of our communities are new or newer. If you know anything about Vegas, if it's older than 20 years old, they basically blow it up or
Yeah.
implode it. And then I think that we're fortunate because, as you guys brought up earlier, a lot of our rural towns are based around mining, and they are generally, mining are generally high paying, good jobs. So I think that means that our rural communities are not struggling necessarily maybe as badly as in other states. And I think our roads and stuff, our town is relatively young. I don't know that we have, um, I don't know that we've reached a point in our life, our state's life, where things are really starting to crumble.
Thank you. Also, I'm just curious if you could become Lord Emperor of Nevada for the day, and you could change one thing for that day that would change Nevada moving forever, what would you change?
Mm. Um,
If anything.
wow. That's a great question. Um, wow. I think that I would. Wow, that's a tough one. Hmm. Probably one of my top priorities would be to break up Clark County School District. I think that we need much smaller school districts so that they're closer to the communities that the kids are coming from instead of one mass organization. Because, a lot of the stuff we know is being that we disagree with, I feel like is being indoctrinated into our kids in education. And I think if we're going to start somewhere, that's probably where we've got to start.
Thank you.
Sure.
That was a great answer. I've never heard of that idea of breaking up the huge school districts like that in major cities and counties. And I wrote that down to use in Chicago. So I appreciate that, Ms. Black.
Thanks.
All right. We're going to bring Harry up. Harry has a question. See if he gets it. Maybe. All right. I guess while we wait for Harry, we're going to bring up Free real quick. Free. Go ahead and accept. There we go. Free. Go ahead. Free, you're up on the stage. We can't hear you if you're trying to talk.
Oh, testing. Okay.
There we go.
Sorry, I had my microphone was unplugged. First off, thanks for taking the time to do this. And second off, I have two short, quick questions. The first one, have you ever read the Federalist Papers?
Not from front to back, but I have read
I would
parts
highly
of it.
recommend them. And second, who is your favorite founder
Hmm.
and why? And I'll exit while you answer those. Thank you.
Um, that's a great question. Hmm. I don't know. I mean, I guess I would say probably Washington, maybe because I feel like he never really wanted to be I don't think he ever wanted to be president. He just wanted what was best for the country. I don't think that he was out for himself. And I wish more politicians or people involved in politics would come from that position, and view it as service, not as uh, leadership. I think a lot of times everyone says, "Oh, you're a great leader," but really we're here to serve the people. And I don't think you can do that if you have a huge ego and you just want to be a star. So,
Very good. Dunkel, do you have a question before I bring up the next person or?
Sure. I'll follow up with he asked about who was like your favorite founding father. What do you believe is the most important constitutional amendment Now, of course, they're all equally important, but which one would you think is the most critical and why?
Um, I think freedom of speech is, well, God, that's tough. Um, hmm. I hate to say, well, I guess I'd be torn between the Second Amendment and the First Amendment, right? Like, we know that they go hand in a hand, but it's almost like what comes first, the chicken or the egg. You can't have free speech if you can't defend your right to have free speech. But I think free speech, especially right now, because um, we seem to be losing it rapidly. So I would say that's probably my number one.
Right, thanks. So I'm trying to bring one of the guests that you actually brought into the server. Francis, if you could go ahead and accept the invite to come up to the stage. If not, you did type out your question. I can just go ahead and read it, which it looks I may have to do. So I'll go ahead and read Francis's question. Francis said, hundreds of us showed up at BCC meetings for the last month. The commissioners delayed the votes on land restriction vote and vax votes until next meeting. Question is it worth it to keep showing up, even if they vote against us? Do you have any words of wisdom?
This is for the county commission meeting.
Yeah, I believe so. The BCC meetings for the last month.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's worth showing up. At least in my experience in the legislature, it it even if it didn't change the outcome of that topic or legislation, you definitely could sense that legislators would get nervous when they knew people were paying attention to what they were doing. So I think it's definitely a good job or a good idea. I guess, like you guys always do, the greatest thing you can do is to go show up and keep it respectful. And the comments that you guys make are always so uh, incredible and well thought out. And I definitely think it makes a difference, and it shows that we're listening, whether it changes their mind in that instance. They're definitely going to be thinking uh, down the lines at the next election. And is this decision going to impact me getting reelected or not? And whether it affects the outcome or not, that is definitely something that they think about.
So I have a quick follow-up to that, Annie, if you don't mind. So you're an elected rep and you have constituents that reach out to you to express their feelings on things and that type of stuff. How serious do you take the ones that actually take the time to send you an email or send you a letter to your team, basically? Do you um, do you really respond to those more so than you would like polls or anything else that's giving you some direction on how you should legislate?
Yes, but I feel like I probably have a different approach to communication with constituents than most electeds. I have a newsletter called Anniegrams, and during the session, I would routinely ask people that were signed up for my newsletter to respond back and tell me what they thought about legislation. For example, the death penalty. The death penalty was up a law to repeal the death penalty, basically. And I'll be honest, it's an issue that even to this day, I'm very torn on it. And um, so I put it out there and I said, "Hey, look, I'm not perfect. I don't have all the answers. Um, and what do you think about it?" And it was really interesting to see what people said because there were so many things in there that I never even thought about. So yeah, I mean, I take pride in routinely communicating with my we call it Annie's Army and my constituents. I try to personally respond to every email that I get. Um, it's a little more complicated, but I would say unfortunately I think I'm the exception and not the rule as far as that goes. So
That's a rarity that you actually try to listen and respond to all your constituents. And I think that's something a lot of politicians these days just don't do. They give the canned written response. Thank you for writing me, or blah, 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 or whatever. But the fact that you actually take the time to listen and respond to them, I think that'll make your constituents feel more valued. And I think they'll appreciate you more as a result. So Mr. Harry here had technical difficulties with his mic. So we're going to ask his question here. He wrote it out to us. He's got a two-part question. Here's the first part. In Nevada, can you be easily tested for the Delta variant of COVID-19? Where I live, our local doctors, our local hospital, and our local county health departments have no such tests. Now, if one of those entities want to test for the Delta variant, they first confirm that the patient is positive for COVID, then send a specimen to the state capitol where they go to a lab to have the genetic markers verified. And those results are then sent to another lab to be refined in some other manner. Then those results are sent to a third lab for some kind of razzle dazzle mystery doctory work that lab produces the strain result. I'm told it's a very complicated and skilled labor intensive process. My doctor tells me that those labs cannot process a very high rate of submission, so they've been instructed to only submit samples from people who are fully vaccinated and when contract COVID anyway. So the question is, does that happen in Nevada too? And if the process is that complicated and time consuming, how is it possible for the CDC and the Biden administration to determine that 83% of all new cases are from this Delta strain? Sounds kind of suspicious to me.
Yeah, that's a lot to unpack there, but from what I understand, and I'm no expert on, on the testing, although I've had to get tested a lot when I was at the legislature because I wouldn't wear a mask. But um, my understanding is that, yeah, they're the testing the variant of COVID or the strain that you have, I guess, is such a tedious process that it's rarely happening. It's not, they're basically just testing you. Yes, you have COVID. No, you don't have COVID. And I don't know that it goes much further than that because I think the process is just not streamlined enough yet. And that's my understanding of it. But I need to look into that more because I'm not 100% sure, honestly.
Absolutely. And this one, second part's a little less serious. He asked, how many ambulances were called to treat snowflake Democrats who fainted or had heart attack symptoms when you didn't wear a mask on the House floor?
A lot, I guess. What was funny? They voted to take my right to vote, and they just let me because I wouldn't wear a mask. The Democrats all voted that I could no longer represent my constituents, which is insane. And then they just let me sit on the floor of the assembly. So it was kind of weird. If I'm this infectious super spreader who's breaking all these rules, you would think that they would make me leave the chamber, but no, they didn't. So they're funny. But it's funny. There's bars and restaurants all around the legislature, and they would walk in the building with masks on and then come out and be elbow to elbow drinking and dancing and doing karaoke in downtown Carson City with no masks on. So it just became unbearable for me to play along with it anymore at one point. So, yeah.
A- Absolutely. I completely understand that. All right. So now we have Guthix for our next question.
Hi, Assemblywoman Black. I'm Guthix. I was just gonna follow up again on more of Harry's questions. How happy are you so far with your state's implementations of Operation Warp Speed and everything that's gone on with that?
As far as getting people vaccinated, you mean?
Yeah, like the rollout, I don't know, like interoperability during the Trump administration, things like that.
Mm. Um, I don't know. I mean, I don't think that I attribute our rollout of and handling of COVID to our governor. And I think that, or mismanagement, I guess I should say, I think that there have been um, so many inconsistencies and the rules constantly changed. so many times that it just denigrated the whole thing. And I think it's correctly or incorrectly, it's made people really, really suspicious of the whole thing. And I think that that's fair. So I guess if I could, say I I wouldn't say I'm happy with it. I think I wish it was more consistent. I wish it was more science based and less political. And it seems to me like when the governor said these businesses can stay open and these businesses can't, it was very willy nilly, and it felt a lot like the government just picking who was a winner and who was a loser. And I just basically have disagreed with pretty much everything that they've done so far. That's the short answer, I guess. I mean, I think it's high five to Trump for getting the vaccine rolled out so quickly, I guess. But, in our state, I have not really agreed with the handling of the pandemic at all.
I absolutely have not either. I think it's been an authoritarian disaster. Damon's got a follow-up question since we're on the topic.
Yeah, I was actually curious. Sisolak has kind of been back and forth, I think, on requiring mandated vaccines in Nevada. At least in this community here, a lot of us are very much pro personal choice and anti-mandate, thinking that it's a personal choice whether the risk benefit risk analysis makes sense to you. Sisolak has since talked about mandating vaccines in like colleges and certain jobs in Nevada. And in this trend, I'm curious what your thoughts are as far as do you think Nevada will be a state that will follow basically the Biden administration's suggestion that states should start mandating on a statewide level? I'm curious where you think the state's going to go.
Um, I think that I don't know. I think that they already have said that or from what I've heard from people, they've already said that you have to have it to go to UNR, and maybe some other colleges as well. And I think they're not gonna. I mean, I guess in my mind, strategically speaking, w- do they have to even mandate it? It seems like they're just putting it on employers to say, hey, they're just making it so onerous for the employers that you can't stay open unless all your employees are vaccinated. Well, then I guess technically Sisolak doesn't have to mandate the vaccine. He can just put it on the back of the employers, which is basically what he's done already, right? He's made businesses the mask police so that he could dictate on high and they would have to be the ones stuck enforcing it. So, he's got his lottery where he's taking our tax money and giving it away to people for entering a lottery when they get vaccinated. So, I don't know. I think if he exhausts all of his options, I don't think I would be shocked if he did mandate it. But for right now, I don't know if he needs to.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to have a quick follow-up question to that. Why does it seem that Steve Sisolak always seems to do whatever California does a couple weeks after? It seems whenever Newsom or LA does something, they immediately do it like very soon after. Why does Sisolak seem so bent on doing everything that California does?
So, I think that it probably had something to do with falling in line so that they could get the blue state bailout money. And I think Sisolak's actually from California. Maybe I'm speaking out of turn on that, but I don't know what his motivations are. They don't seem to make a lot of sense to me, but he basically destroyed the economy in our state. I read yesterday, I think it was 40% of the room reservations that we had created have canceled. So our tourism industry is going to take another hit because of this mask thing. And so I don't know. I don't know why he's doing it, but I know he got a big fat check for Nevada for doing it. And I don't know if he'll probably give state employees and people raises, you know. So seems like it's always about the money.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I mean, there's a lot of, I believe, a lot of corruption in the Nevada state government. I think there's a lot between the state employees and the unions. and the governor and the state legislator. I think there needs to be a lot that needs to be cleaned up in this state. So why don't we bring up Proto for another question? We are getting close to the end of our AMA tonight, but I'll let Proto ask. Proto, you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, Annie. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Just peachy. I appreciate you taking the time to do this. I just have a question. It's kind of on a macro level, higher level question, and I wanted to get your take on it. I don't know if you're aware or not, but ever since January 6th, we know that the Democrats have been using that event to push their incrementalism. And one of the things that I've noticed is that the Capitol Hill Police is opening up offices in Florida and California. And you'd have to wonder, why would the Capitol Hill Police have any jurisdiction for anything outside of the capital city? And my question for you is, what do you think the purpose of that is? And do you think that that's on its way to Nevada as well?
I've been hearing a lot about that on different, alternative media sources. And I don't know. I mean, who knows? The stuff that I've heard is that the Capitol Police basically operate out of a different set of guidelines and they can be controlled by people in DC. And so I don't know. I don't know that I fully understand the rationale behind that. I definitely think it's interesting that, whatever you think of January 6th, there's someone that was killed in that day. Ashley Babbitt was shot, and I still have yet to hear anybody talk about who or what, or what even really happened that day. And I guess that kind of I guess that probably makes me and other people nervous to know that Capitol Police are going to other places in the country, because it kind of feels like, hey, if you can shoot someone in the state capitol and there's no ramifications for that, what are you going to be able to do in other places? I just think, the guy may have been in the right, but we need to know who was it, what happened, do an investigation, and somebody lost their life. So I don't know. I'm not sure I really have an answer for you on that, but those are kind of the things that I've heard and my general feelings about it, I guess.
We got another follow-up question from Nux here.
Thank you. Ms. Black, I had a couple questions for you. One is regarding states' rights, and since you are in the legislature there, we've seen the federal government just absolutely ballooning over decades and decades, and starting to put more mandates on states, and basically legislation coming out of the Supreme Court. Is there a point where states just have to start asserting themselves, even to the point of nullification of federal law or Supreme Court rulings that have infringed on states' rights?
I mean, if that's what the state elected people feel their constituents want them to do, I think that's absolutely what they need to do. I guess I got to go back to what I said a couple minutes ago, which is the federal government has a ton of control because they feed the money, right? And so it's like, well, you can't say no to what they want, because then they'll cut you off. And unfortunately, so many of our states are financially underwater that they rely on that money. So I don't know how much latitude they have to say, no, we're not going to do what you want us to do. But yeah, I mean, definitely states' rights are huge, because anytime the government closest to the people is the best, right? And we know in our individual states what's best for us.
Great, thank you. And then my next question, kind of changing topics a little bit, is for me personally, at one time I was looking to move to Vegas, and for various reasons ended up not moving, but it's kind of still on my radar. And you mentioned that, one, obviously the economy's taken a pretty significant hit. and that the state is very much Democrat controlled right now. But there's a lot of people with everything going on that are very open to moving states. Why should someone consider Nevada to move to? Why should conservatives consider Nevada to move to specifically?
Nevada has a lot of great attributes. Number one, we don't have a state income tax. Our property taxes, in spite of not having a state income tax, are still relatively low. And you're paying on an assessed value, not on the sales price value, thankfully, because our real estate market has just shot up like crazy. So it's still a great place to get employment, to start a business. I mean, I guess for me, there's a lot of regulation here because I know what it was in the 90s, and I have that to compare it to. But it's certainly still better than a lot of other places as far as regulation and whatnot. And I think that because like we talked about earlier, we're looking for new industries. I think if you have a business that's not necessarily something that we have here, you could probably get some financial support or you know some some tax relief. So it's a great place to live. I think it's relatively pretty safe. And I guess the one downfall is the education system, but we do have a lot of private and charter school options and obviously homeschool. So I think that education is a kind of a struggle across the country. So I wouldn't say that's unique to us. And, for all the disadvantages, I think Nevada still really well exemplifies, the Nevada or the American dream and a place that you can come and build something and have a great life. It's close to cool, Zion and Lake Mead, and you've got snow in Mount Charleston not too far away, and so location wise, it's pretty good. So traffic wise is good. We don't have a lot of traffic here. The climate's great. It's mostly sunny almost all year round. And I think real estate in comparison with other states is still relatively inexpensive, even though it's gotten much higher in the last 2 years. So overall, it really is a great place to live. We could do better, but it's good.
That was a great pitch. Thank you so much.
Sure.
And the skiing at Tahoe is amazing. I gotta say that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I love it
I'm
up
not a
there.
snow person, so
No, nobody's perfect. It's okay. Um, so I had a quick question to ask, and I know that when the shooting happened, a lot of people on our server were interested in what was going on, and I think the interest was piqued mostly by the lack of transparency by on both federal and local officials. It seemed like local officials were starting to be a little bit more open about it when it came to information that was coming out about the shooting at Mandalay Bay there. But the feds stepped in and kind of shut down a lot of the talk that was going on. What are your thoughts about what happened that day? And what I don't know if you're in the know about anything, but anything that you would like to potentially talk about regarding that, especially about the transparency of that whole situation.
yeah, that's a tough one. I think that I don't know. I mean, I guess my general opinion is it seemed like everybody wanted answers and they wanted them now. And maybe this was just such a unique situation, being it was so rare. We weren't really equipped with how to handle it. I don't think anybody would have been. And I think that, um, as far as information, they probably should have waited until they had more concrete information before they started saying things or making statements. Because there were some things where they said, oh, this specific thing happened at this specific time, and then it turned out later was a different time. And those sort of mistakes cause people to be suspicious, whether it's right or wrong. Um, and there's a lot of people that are upset about the GoFundMe money that was set up, the account that was set up for the victims. and where did that money go? And my sister and her boyfriend were down there, and I don't know if it was the way that the buildings are laid out, but they were there, and if it could have been an echo, but they said at the time it felt like there was gunshots coming from different directions, not just that one place. And so, it's a really tense, tragic situation, and I'm sure everybody that was there has a different experience of what happened. So it's going to be, it's a I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure how I would handle that. Thank goodness I wasn't the sheriff at the time or the governor, but there definitely seemed to be some inconsistencies that made people suspicious, and um it's so strange that it seems that we still to this day don't know what Paddock's motive was. And I
Exactly.
think that bothers people too, because as regular everyday Joes, you want to know why. Why would he do that? And so then you start maybe thinking it was something nefarious, because you want a reason. So yeah.
Good stuff. All right, we got Trump 2024 up.
Hello. I was going to ask, how do you deal with a bunch of communists in the assemblies? Like, is it ever annoying to have to deal with people that basically just think, you shouldn't have any freedom and stuff?
Yeah, it wasn't what I expected. Even though people tell you what to expect, it's worse than I thought it was going to be. But I took enjoyment in making their lives miserable every single day that I was there for the whole entire session. I know that they got sick of listening to me make statements on the floor, and I think that as a freshman legislator, they don't expect you to be heard. They just want you to sit there and be seen. And I didn't do that, so it is frustrating, but it's also fun to fight back and give them a run for their money.
Great, great. So we have one question from a guest that you brought in. Here she asks, what is the greatest external threat to the United States, and why do you believe that?
External threat?
Yeah, external threat.
Hmm. Um,
It could be taken to a state level. I think whether it's economic or military type threat, both I would say would constitute an external type threat.
I think right now, given the way that our country's printing out money and how much of our country that China owns, I would say they're our greatest external threat right now, in my opinion. Just because we have seriously over leveraged ourselves, and we've just destroyed our military. So I don't know. I mean, I think Trump was starting to build it back up, but I don't think that we're viewed by China and some of these other places as a superpower that we used to be. And if it feels like we're just teetering on, too much inflation, or we're just very close to, I think that they're just watching, salivating, right? Waiting for it to go a little bit further. So maybe
Right.
that's
Right on the edge of a tipping point, you would say.
Mm-hmm.
how it feels.
Yeah, it does. All right, Donkel. You're up.
So we could start to ask our final questions here. We just got a few questions left. One of them is this is a lighter one. What do state legislators do in their off years? Now I know in politics there's no such thing as an off season, but when it's not an election year, what's your main focus?
Getting reelected. I mean, you're just basically serving, or you're coming out and you're going right back into election mode. Assembly people are elected every 2 years. So you're at the legislature for 4 months, 5 months maybe, with, travel and all that stuff. And then you come back home, maybe take a little bit of time off, and then go right back into campaign mode. So um, politics is pretty much my life. I'm pretty boring. And that's, family and politics. That's pretty much my life.
Hey, it's all of our lives. I don't blame you. And again, there really is no such thing as an off season in politics. Another question is, it comes from Admiral Nelson. He wrote, uh, "What would you like? What kind of message would you send to your constituents in your district, and what message would you send to voters in general?"
I know it's
Um,
pretty open-ended. Good
I
luck.
think, yeah, right. A lot of people are contacting me all the time about, fight against the mask mandate, fight against vaccine passports, fight against, um, our get a better education for our kids, and I do fight for those things. But unfortunately, our legislature is only in session 4 months out of every other year. The rest of the time, we got to fight for ourselves. And I would say, stop waiting on an elected official to solve your problems and go out there and fight back. And a lot of people are, you know what I mean? Don't comply if you don't feel compelled to comply, and go fight for your kids, and don't wait for somebody who's elected to do it for you. You got to fight for your own rights, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, I think you just hit it on the nail on the head right there. And I don't think enough people in the Republican Party say that, to be honest. But we gotta, one man, Donald Trump, for example, cannot do all the work. He can't. It's just impossible. The people have to actually stand up, raise their voice, put their foot down, and say no. We got to draw the line, and then we have to enforce it, in my opinion. So
Yeah,
I
people have all
think
the power. They don't realize it, but they do.
Absolutely, and I think the people I think we need to stop living in fear, to be honest with you, in my opinion. I think fear and complacency has controlled a lot of people on the right and people in America in general. And I think once we overcome that fear, I think we can finally start to enact the change that we all want. So a final question, since we're getting close to the end here. Um, I'm curious, who do you like for Nevada governor and Nevada Senate in 2022? Do you have anyone in mind?
That's a tough one. We have some really great candidates for governor. I think that they all have interesting, compelling stories. I haven't picked one that I'm behind yet. I think it's too early to really get on anybody's bandwagon. But I think each of them has their own unique, interesting story. Um, I think John Lee, he's the mayor from North Las Vegas. He just left the Democrat Party, became a Republican. I think that's an interesting story, and that might help us get some Democrats and moderates to vote Republican. People that got left behind. Joey Gilbert's been fighting for our businesses and health freedom since the beginning of the pandemic. Joe Lombardo, he's been sheriff in Clark County for a long time and served the community for a long time. Um, and he's in law enforcement, which obviously, people still put a lot of stock in law enforcement. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, I think they'll have uh, different kind of great things about them. We just got to pick the one that can beat Sisolak.
I think we can all agree with that. Sisolak has been kind of a disgrace, not only for Nevada, but for um, a lot of the states out there when we look at how he's dealt with COVID, how he's helped to kind of burn down the small businesses of Nevada, similar to what was done in Michigan and New York and Illinois and other states that went full hardcore on COVID restrictions. So
Is Sisolak known pretty? I guess I haven't really thought about that. Is he one of the governors that people talk about nationwide for being kind
um,
of a turd?
I would say he's not as bad as the governor of Michigan or obviously the governor, the habitual sexual harasser of New York, but definitely he's up there as well. I think just because of his delay in a couple of weeks and how he implements, he may duck and avoid the spotlight as much as the others, but he's also up there. So as we bring this to a close, Ms. Black, thank you very much for joining us. Where can our members go and learn more about you, potentially donate for your reelection, and help in any way possible, especially if they live in Nevada like Tonko does?
The best place is to go to annieblack.net. It's ANNIE and then black like the color. I would, I would say regardless, sign up for my newsletter and see if you like it. And I'm always open to feedback on that. So I would love for people to sign up and tell me what they think and if they like it or what they would change about it. But I like it. I like doing it. I think it's a unique opportunity to talk right to the people, which was something Trump was really great at. And I think it's just way undervalued and super important. So, and at any time they could shut us down on social media. So I feel like this email kind of correspondence is really important in case you get kicked off some sort of social media. So,
For sure. Well, thank you very much for joining us tonight. I'm going to leave you with one parting question. Do you like memes? And if so, which ones are your favorite ones?
I love memes. I just love the funny ones, all the funny ones. It doesn't matter. But, you guys met my son. He helped me kind of get on this today because I'm a bit of a boomer. But some of the memes go over my head. I'm like, I don't get that. So, so
Nice.
boomer friendly, funny memes.
Do you ever ask him, what does this meme mean? Or what
Of
does it say?
course.
Of course. Nice.
Of course.
Excellent.
He's got to translate all the memes for me.
Beautiful. All right. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Everybody else, you can go ahead and jump over into voice chat if you want to do a voice chat after the thing. And we wish you the best of luck, Annie, and keep fighting the great fight. We appreciate it a lot.
You guys too. This is awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yep. Take care.
Okay. Bye.